Hey everybody, it's Master Gallengeist here, bringing you my review of the series finale of Supernatural, Carry On. And you're probably kind of wondering, why is he wearing a jacket like this? This is kind of weird. Well, it's the series finale of Supernatural, and I knew I would have kind of weird shit to discuss, so kind of like a dinner theater kind of jacket, if you will. So, before this series finale popped off, we had the whole hour long retrospective thing, and that was kind of nice to see all the different kind of people. I thought we'd probably see maybe some of them in the series finale. We did see Crowley, Rowena, all of them just talking about different kind of things. An interesting thing that was kind of brought up was that Crowley's actor thought at some point that he might be an angel in disguise. So I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. But they mainly talked about like the themes and everything that they went through with this show. It's not essential viewing for it. I think that this would have made more sense viewing it after the series finale. But if you're really into it, go for it. If you're kind of on the whole thing and just want it to be over with, it's totally something that you can skip over. So, the series finale. It hit some things that I think were alright. Now, I say that because it did elicit some emotional responses. However, like the whole entirety of this season and everything going on, execution matters and what's going on within this episode matters. When you see this episode, you are kind of confused because it doesn't really seem like it fits neatly at the end of anywhere within the show. I say that because I could technically attach this to any kind of part and it would pretty much make sense. Now, granted, the talking about Jack and whatnot and the Menelader's bunker would be kind of confusing, but it's really kind of strange how this is supposed to be a series finale and it kind of got screwed over by the episode that preceded it being like the season finale. And I think if that had been reconfigured into such a way that would have made a better series finale. Because this almost seemed like somebody had an idea and they fucking stretched it, and it's a detriment to this. Everybody involved deserved better than this. It's not complete and utter dog shit, but everybody deserved better. So, right off the bat, I'm kind of displeased with the episode because it doesn't start off like how seasons 1 through 5 pretty much did, of like you would have your enders, like everything like The Road So Far and everything like that, and it didn't start off with Carry On, so I was kind of pissed off at that. And we get Sam and Dean doing their daily kind of stuff, and I'm like, okay, I understand this, but you could have, granted, Carry On is an important song to this show. I mean, granted, it's the fucking title of this episode. So, I would be forgiving if you would pretty much pump that song throughout the entirety of this episode. Granted, would it have gotten annoying? Potentially, if executed horrendously. But we get them going to this different kind of song, doing their daily life. They have the dog that we had been introduced in the previous episode, as Dean like messing with them. We see them going through their daily routine, living their lives and everything. We see Sam pretty much exercising and everything, Dean waking up and just doing whatever he wants to do. And then he's like, yeah, I kind of got something. Because Sam's like, hey, you got anything? And they go to a pie place. And there's a pie festival thing. He's like, dude, I'm owed this one, pretty much. And Sam kind of sits down and is kind of like, in his kind of like sad mood. And Dean comes back with a fucking box of like all these different pie slices. I'm like, yes. It kind of fit because you definitely saw better representations of the Sam and Dean characters that we've really known throughout the series. Dean having his pie kind of moment and everything like that, and Sam bringing up everything with all the characters that they've lost of Cass and Jack and all that. He's like, yeah, but we're free now, and we need to live as full as possible to make that sacrifice worth something. And he's like, yeah, dig in. And Sam slams a pie in his face like, I've always wanted to do that. And Dean, of course, not getting like, he's like, all right, fine. And then he eats it and whatnot. So that's them kind of dealing with that kind of thing. Then we are into pretty much where our hunting episodes usually begin, where we see a family in their home and suddenly we see something at the door and they open it up. The father gets stabbed through the back. We got these masked kind of people with machetes. We see that the two small kids run into a room and kind of hide while the mother tries to kind of protect them. But at first I thought she was killed, but she got like knocked out of the way. Dude kind of walks in. We think that they are able to escape their notice, but they get dragged out. Of course, this then sets Sam and Dean up for their kind of thing. They go in, they got the fake identities of like Singer and Kripke, and we learn that the mother had her tongue removed, and it's like, okay, and that the father was killed and that the boys were taken. It's like, oh, doing home invasions now? Yeah. That's want us to expand our things and everything and see kind of where it goes. And I'm like, all right, cool. They see a sketch of what it is, and they kind of go to figure out what's going on. And Dean's like, hey, this kind of lines up with something the dad was doing. And back in like the 80s, around the Akron, Ohio area. And it lined up with the same sketch thing. He's like, ooh, dude, it's mimes. No, vamp mimes. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. But they're able to figure out kind of where their kind of operation is. And Dean, they get there at night. And I'm like, these guys have been doing this for like 15 years, and they're going after potential vampires at night? Okay. And they're going in without any backup. It's like, alright, that's kind of a recipe for disaster. But granted, they have dealt with a lot of shit since then, so we see them doing their thing. And Dean pulls out pretty much ninja stars, like, come on, let me use this. And all I was thinking of was South Park at that point. I'm like, yeah, when the boys got those fucking ninja toys and Butters got a fucking ninja star thrown into his eye. You really want to play that game, Dean? I mean, his manic glee, it'd be like, oh, dude, I could do this. I'm like, okay. That's just going to piss a vampire off. Are you going to fucking, like, saw its head off? Well, see, to get to this point, they were able to find like two of the other vampires. They chopped off one of their heads, and they did the whole kind of like, you know what? Just tell us where where your people are, where you usually do these things. I ain't gonna tell you shit. It's like, well, okay. You either tell us stuff and I use this machete, or you don't tell us stuff and he starts trying to cut your head off with that knife. And if we find out that the kids are dead, he's gonna use a spoon. And I'm like, yeah, that at least got back to like Sam and Dean's hunting style of like, listen, they will use whatever means that they need to given the situation. If you're an okay monster and you're an okay person, you're an okay person, they don't have any beef with you. If you're an asshole that does this kind of stuff, they will cut your head off with a spoon. And then he was like, yeah, I'm going to do this, and gave him the information. They go out to the barn and everything. They're going out trying to figure out what's going on, because evidently they do this thing. They do the whole thing with the cutting out of the tongue. They take the kids and they like set them up and then juice them, and evidently it's not supposed to be fast food. Alright, so they get into the barn. They're able to get to the kids, and they are then blocked off by 4 of the vampire people with their skull masks on and everything. Tell the kids to run, and we start having our fight sequence. And it's one of the more decent kind of fight sequences. I'm glad that at the end they're able to do a decent fight sequence. It's like, alright, cool. Yeah, granted, there were cuts and everything like that, but it wasn't as weird as like some of the other kind of action sequences that went on. It felt kind of more towards like the usual kind of fight sequences. And there weren't any kind of like crazy powers that would like immediately eject him from the action. So it was a nice kind of back and forth as we see him kind of handling these people. And of course, the way that the teaser kind of hit this episode, I'm like, okay, this is probably their kind of final stand kind of moment. And we will get to why I'm not a fan of how this went down as we get through this. Because this is, well, granted, how certain lines were like going on beforehand, I was a little bit like, okay. And how this kind of shifts at the end where we technically only get half of a hunting episode kind of mucks with it. So they're fighting through and they pretty much get the forces down to like half strength. But like Sam pretty much got knocked out and Dean's pretty much captured, and we get Jenny from season 1, who's a vampire. Like, yeah, she I just called dibs on killing you. I'm like, okay, out of all the season 1 references people wise to do, that's random. Now granted, I understand the pandemic has like affected shit with this, and I'm definitely taking that into consideration. So fuck the pandemic for pretty much limiting vastly the people that we could have guest starring in this. So I understand that. But there's also the balancing act of how was this going to be written and done before the pandemic had to be taken in consideration, and how much of this is actually shaking out as that pre-planned written process. So that's something I'm never going to know and we're never going to know. So it's just a consideration. And Dean's able to kind of conjure his way out. Sam's got up. He's able to take her... Sam's able to take her head off. And then they pretty much tussle with the other two. And we definitely get this like spike thing on the wall that we zoom in on. I'm like, oh. At first I thought Dean was just going to have him run the other dude's head into it. But no, Dean got put onto it and Sam had to take the two of them out. And this is where we get Dean's death. Now, I did feel some emotion here, but whenever I envisioned the end of the boys, it was always Butch and Sundance. They go out together. And this kind of felt off with that. I would think that they would have some kind of way that it would take them both out at once, so that way one wouldn't have to live on without the other one. It just usually kind of goes... I thought that would be the most kind of thematically best ending to kind of go with this. Now, is that why I'm docking negative points for this? Not really. One, yes, it's kind of expectation-wise. But the main negative point is it goes on for a while. And I think there were kind of better things that they could have done, because the kids could have been utilized in that they're thinking, oh, okay, this is kind of similar to what happened with Sam and Dean, that they got brought into the monster world through these violent means. And what if they were trying to help these kids and they're both pretty much dying and the vampires are about to win, but these kids, because the vampires are not taking them seriously, somehow are able to kind of put them into a position where either they take them out or the brothers take them out, and then they're kind of like de facto kind of kids of the brothers, where their good deeds of helping and saving people inspire other people to do those kinds of things, and then potentially meeting them later on in the afterlife or something. That's just one kind of thing. Here, we get Dean pretty much, and like, Sam, I can't. He's like first gonna try and get like medical help and everything like this. Like, this is it, man. I really didn't think this was how the day was gonna go. And then he starts pretty much going with his goodbye. And granted, I got emotional with it, but the thing is, it was like going on for a while. I'm like, God damn, yeah, he got a hook thing in the back, but he's going on for quite a while. And I'm like, if you got this much time, Sam could have at least gotten something to like help you out, heal you out, or whatnot. I mean, shit, they could have done some kind of magical who's-a-what's-it or whatnot in the trunk to kind of like help something, just with how the length was going. Okay? But he was talking about how proud he was, how he loved him and all that. How he wasn't sure if Sam would help him when he went to his dorm and everything. He was really afraid of that. And then pretty much asking if it was okay for him to go. And that was pretty... That part I liked. Because at first Sam's like, no, don't ask me to do that. But of course, it's more for Dean, not for Sam. And of course he says, yeah, it's okay. You can go now. And then he dies, and we see Dean pop up in heaven. And then, of course, this is where the other problems start coming in. Now, do I mind that, like, Dean got into heaven? Fuck no. Everything he's done and everything his brother have accomplished, if that doesn't earn you a spot in heaven, fuck. Fuckity doo-dah, fuckity day, titty sprinkles, twatting and knocking. Fuck. I don't know what else does. But we see that he pops up near Roadhouse, and we see Bobby. Actual Bobby, not alt Bobby, not... And you tell by how the actor handles Bobby, this is actual Bobby. Because even though there was alt Bobby, it really wasn't the same Bobby. It's like, oh, that's, we're going from Coke to Cherry Coke. Yeah, there's some kind of Coke in there, but it's got a different kind of flavor. I'm not going with the difference between, like, Diet Coke and regular Coke, because they had more of a flavor similarity. Okay, granted, fuck that. That's not important. But he's like, hey, man, how's it? How you doing? It's like, wow, is this heaven? Yep. It's, I don't remember this as my memory. And then we get the information that Jack, before moving on, fixed heaven with Cass's help, as he's sitting there pretty much getting ready to drink a beer with Bobby, and how he's kind of happy with that. I want to bring up two kind of important things. One, kind of, Jack might be hands off. But with any of the brothers dying, I would think that he would have popped up and been like, hey, you did good. Even though we are not really aware of how much time passed between the end, last episode, and when Dean died. I'm like, okay, why couldn't he have just popped up and be like, hey? Because it's not really interfering to be like, I know you died. This is heaven. This is your reward. Thank you, Dad, kind of thing. And that Cass helped him. Like, they tore down all the walls of heaven and they put them all together so that way everybody's together. You would think that would be, like, basic shit. But, and that just brings up another thing. If how did Cass help him? Now, granted, Jack is now God. Jack could just be like, empty, suck my nuts, and takes Cass. Because for being some kind of cosmic being, the empty gets its ass fucking handed to it. Like, oh, they made a bomb out of somebody. Boom, shakalaka. Billy was able to fucking scare its ass. And then when Billy was, like, injured, of course, and dying. Which, by the way, means that there needs... No, not just Billy. Billy died, and then that auto red shirt Reaper fucking death died. So there needs to be a damn death. And wouldn't a death pop up and be like, alright, man. This is it. You know what I mean? Like they missed the opportunity of even doing a Reaper kind of thing. I'm like, fuck, man. Why wouldn't you do that? I mean, what if Jack, like, he got everybody back? We see eventually that Donna's okay and everything. What if he brought Tess the Reaper back? And Tess was the one that brought Dean to heaven. Oh no, I would think that would be something that you would do in a series finale, but haha, fuck me, that's right. However, we see that, and Dean, of course, is happy and everything, and he's just like, yeah, I gotta wait for Sam and everything, but he's like, time's different up here, no problem, man. And then, of course, he's like, hey, so what are you gonna do now? And then he looks over, and we see that he gets Baby, and it's like, yay, alright. And then he drives on and turns on the radio, and Carry On My Wayward Son, that's really good. And he goes, and he's pretty much just driving through heaven, and that makes sense, because home to Dean would be the car. And of course, Bobby talks about how Rufus and Rufus's wife are, of course, living down the road. John and Mary are down the road. I'm like, and you couldn't get them? Granted, I understand pandemic, but if it's that much of a consideration, you hiatus completely until you're able to do what the series deserves. Now, granted, I understand it's like, oh, but what about like their work and all that kind of stuff and pays? And I'm like, yes, you work that shit out. But you make sure that you get to a point where you can have those people. And granted, I'm glad that they talked about them, but it's like, come on, there's so many people. Ellen, Joe, all the different hunters throughout all the different things that they've done. Motherfucking Kevin, who has gotten thunder sharded once again. Ugh. He doesn't deserve all the fucking crap that has occurred to him. Fucking shit that has occurred to him. I don't know why I went crap, but I just flowed. I'm like, oh, yeah. We gonna even mention Kevin at all? Fucking no. God damn it. Sorry, just one other thing, and then I'm like, okay. So, then we get the fucking weirdest way to do it. Okay? I say that because this is where the stretching comes in, and it's like, okay, so the main portion of this then gets into Sam dealing with his life after Dean. Pretty much walking through, being very sad, petting the dog. And then we get some kind of weird shit where he's like sitting in Dean's room looking up at the guns. I'm like, he's not thinking of killing himself, is he? Because the way that was done, I'm like, what the fuck? But of course, one of Dean's phones goes off. Somebody calling for Agent Bon Jovi, recommended by Donna, because they got people with missing hearts. I'm like, oh, werewolves! And Sam, of course, decides to do that. So, of course, we get Carry On My Wayward Son pretty much playing as Dean's driving up in heaven, and Sam starts living his life. He had done that, evidently. He has a kid and names him Dean. Now, the timeline-wise on this are just kind of nutty, because it's not really apparent how much time passes. It's like, okay, how long did he have that kid for? Because little kid with, like, blonde hair, which is really kind of weird because the kid grows up and has really darker hair. And, no, granted, I understand hair color gets kind of crazy and everything, and, of course, you have to pick your child actors when you can, pandemic-wise, so... And we see him going through, tossing the baseball. We get no idea who he is married or whatnot because they just stand off in the background, helping his kid, learning and everything. And then we get the one point where Sam is, like, old. And it's fucking, like, I don't have a problem with a lot of the destinations that we hit, but the execution of the journeys was just fucking horrendous. I'm like, okay, this umpteenth portion needs to be executed better. I don't mind that they die, like, we got this Dean dying, and then Sam moving on. I was like, plot demands, all that all that noise. We see Sam, and I want to know the budget and the department, because I don't know anybody who went and looked, this looks good, Sam's wig and everything, and I'm like, he put baby in the fucking garage and covered her. I don't give a 10-ton donkey's dick if you go to live a normal life. You don't fucking put that car in a garage and tarp it. Grant, I know there's painful memories and stuff and everything, but you're living for Dean. Dean wouldn't fucking put that car in there, and Sam wouldn't fucking put that car in there. He'd fucking be toiling around. He'd be showing his kid how to drive in that car, especially if he named Dean. Fuck me. But we then see it's like, okay, is this another kind of suicide thing? As he goes in the car, and it looks like, is he gonna, like, exhaust himself? Is he gonna fucking drive off and, like, essentially get into an accident, which then essentially kills baby and Sam? And I'm just like, what the hell? And then we get the shifting of the Carry On Our Wayward Son to another kind of one, which I don't think was a good choice to do for that. It was just really kind of weird. I didn't mind it, but I'm like, okay, why did we change it? Why didn't we just keep continuing on with the song? I'm like, all right, and we see really old Sam, which still looks kind of bad, but looks better than the weird fucking one that was in the car. And he's lying there in the bed, pretty much dying. And of course, his son Dean comes up and has a tattoo on his arm. I'm like, yeah, doing the stuff, doing the family business. And of course, he says the same lines that Sam said to Dean. And then of course, he passes on. And this is where it kind of lines up with Dean. He actually is kind of wearing his same kind of similar outfit that he had in the first season that we kind of first saw him. And he comes to a bridge that's kind of similar from the first season as well. Gets out, kind of looks over the bridge, and you would think that he would probably pop up in the car, but of course Dean kind of stops. And a really nice touch was he's looking out over, and he just knows Sam's behind him, and he goes, "Hey, Sammy," and then turns around. That was good. I like that. He just knew his brother was there. And they hug out, and they look out over the water, and end scene. Yeah. And then, of course, we get the actors and the crew thanking everybody and zooming out, and that's the end. So, that part I really liked. Though, it hit enough, but it deserved better. There's a lot of different choices that I think should have been made, and that I think the overall flow of this episode didn't really work. Sorry, that was just the "Hey Sammy" bookending it, because that's what he first said to Sam in the first season, first episode. And them just being in sync with each other is really good. But it just needed to land more than it did. And of course, I know the pandemic has fucked it, and that the writers were doing whatever they wanted. And I know that we get the whole thing with the retrospective, and the thing is, they were saying the right things: family, love, all this kind of stuff, but we don't see all these different people. Granted, the last shot being of the brothers, yeah, but they should have seen the other people that they've helped. Like, there should have been like this giant kind of party thing or whatnot that they had seen or whatnot, and all these people thanking them for all the times that they saved people, even attempted to save people, and them just being like, yeah, we're at peace, man, you helped us, we want you to be at peace too. And then just like Kevin being screwed, all the other people out of that catharsis too, and part of it. Now granted, I'm not trying to be unreasonable, I understand that everybody's got schedules and all the shit going on in the world, and I'm just like, it gets some of it at least. And that I can at least give it more than certain things. But I'm still like, this needed to be better for 15 years. This needed to be better for, the first 5 seasons. Because, in all actuality, if you boil down this episode, it is the inverse of the season 5 ending, where Sam sacrifices himself, of course doing the job that they always do, and Dean had to live on. Then of course we got something similar with season 7, where Dean stabs Dick Roman, didn't think you'd probably bring that up, goes off into purgatory, and Sam lives his life without Dean. It's really kind of weird. I mean, granted, Sam should be shaken up and everything, and feel that a big part of his life is missing and gone. But he was able to do it once before, and it's just like, that is an inherent problem of what has occurred within this series. They've already kind of dealt with this, so it's kind of harder to have that emotional punch. I will bring up The Walking Dead in this kind of comparison because it goes to the effect of whenever you pull these kind of punches, like when they pulled with Glenn, where they fake out his death and then you get the real death and it doesn't quite have the same kind of thing because you're like, you pull it just enough that you're like, damn it, and it lessens the impact. If that kind of thing hadn't been done before, I think it would have been a little bit more impactful and more understanding that Sam would have these kind of reactions and be this way. But since he essentially already did that once already, it kind of lessens the emotional impact of it this time. Now, granted, it doesn't necessarily impact certain emotional scenes, but the overall effect is not as powerful as if you had done what you needed to do and had it set from the get-go. If you're going to do a plot point and try and get that emotional core that is needed, you can't keep teasing people with it and doing it once and then essentially walking it back and then trying to do it again. That's not good writing. I just wish this was better executed. Now, in the grand scheme of things, or I would still have this as an example of not how to do a series finale. Game of Thrones, I didn't even get the emotional kind of payoff. Of anything. I was just sitting shell-shocked of motherfuck, this is what we are at, this is where we're at now. Now, I more attribute it to the actors of Jared and Jensen being able to pull off the emotional cores rather than the content and the direction and how this went down. So, yeah, they definitely pulled at this one because it was mainly centered on them because, they're the core of the show. This was their end. Now, you would probably say, that kind of undoes your criticism of not having the rest around them. Not necessarily, because those people then become the mirrors of how the boys can then view themselves and their accomplishments. And it is us as the audience as well. Because they're they've only ever seen their actions throughout mostly their own lenses of through their own point of view. Seeing all these different kind of people coming up throughout the years who, of course, they've become family with and being telling them and kind of showing it to them and be hey, here we are, man. We're in heaven, man. This is working out pretty well. It just, that's another kind of crucial aspect that's missing here. Again, I can be lenient on certain ways of how that's done. So, it hit enough in enough places to at least get a nice send-off for the boys, but they still deserve better. I would almost, if I needed to put a percentage on it, I would almost go that it would be 40% of the way there, maximum if I'm being generous. If I'm being at my, wanting to be as honest as possible, I'd be 30%, because that's just how much Jared and Jensen carry it. Okay, that would just be them by themselves. Given the proper content and given the proper endings and everything, and how it's perfect direction and just perfectly well done writing, this would have been a great ending. Granted, asking that to occur 15 years throughout a series, a little bit unreasonable. Now, granted, I think that if you set a certain standard, you should adhere to that standard as much as possible and definitely end on that standard. This definitely does not meet the highest standards that even seasons 1 through 5 did. So I would kind of even cobble together, if anything, I would probably cobble together the last episode, the previous episode, and this episode to try and make some kind of weird amalgamation to tack on to season 5 or whatnot. to be honest with you, because I still use that as my end point of like, yeah, it still deserved better. The hunting was basically done and over with like that. I'm like, if that's the case, you just mainly used the hunting as an excuse to take out Dean. And then did the rest doing a strange, weird montage of Sam while we are mainly stuck with Dean driving around. You don't really focus on one or the other. Like, if we had Dean die, and then the rest of the episode followed Sam doing all these different kind of stories and getting to the end of his life before, bam, he popped up into heaven, and damn, that would have been where we just see him and Bobby sitting there, and they go like, let's go for a ride. That would have been better, because this one, it takes away the emotional. We don't get to sit with Sam and ruminate for. Yes, he's sad, but he understands with what he said, with what Dean said to him. He has to live for those who sacrificed and did all these things for them and live that best life. See him teaching his kid certain kind of cool things. Seeing how his kid's life was able to balance out being a normal person and a hunter. And then getting to that end point of either dying in bed or dying like Dean, where he's out with his boots on, but it's his son taking him to the great beyond. That. Ugh. See, there's so many other kind of better ways that these things could have went, because it's a disservice to these characters and these actors and these stories with how certain things were executed here. Because I'm like, okay, man, yeah, you got Dean driving around in Baby, that's really cool, but I kind of would have rather had that at the end, as they're kind of like going around and possibly going to a barbecue or something. And then you would have really gotten, well, you did get the emotional reunion with Dean and Sam in heaven. But could you imagine that pack where you're like, okay, Dean died. We think he went to heaven, but at the end, getting that they both are like that, I think would have been a better reveal. So, it's really kind of weird to be like, wow, this show is finally fucking over. I don't have any more episodes to review. And it's just, I'm sad, but I'm more relieved because it has long outstayed what it was able to sustain. And I don't like saying that, okay? I hate fucking saying these things and being like, this is where it could have been done to be better. I've been saying those kind of things for years, so that way somebody could be like, listen, okay, let's try and make this a little bit better, because I don't like to rag on shit. I don't like to point out problems. I would love for any piece of medium that I get to be like, wow, that's fucking great, and I could just sit here and just expound and be like, you will be satisfied, and this will be awesome, and I just want to gush about this favorite thing, this awesome thing, this great thing. I was able to do that with certain parts of this episode because of what it did. But it got to the point through these 10 years, and definitely the back half, of holy fucking shit, why? T-shirt, Blu-ray cover, yeah. Because everyone deserved better. I mean, granted, we have the save point of the end of Season 5. Now we just have to see what they're going to do for the box set. 15 seasons? That's going to be expensive. Like all the Marvel movies together. This is weird, man. So those are my opinions on the finale. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Also like and subscribe. Just remember to carry on, keep fighting, and fuck fate.